What's good, YouTube? We got a video from the guy shown in scope. I really hope this isn't an AI video. I really hope this is not an AI video. We've been seeing a lot of AI videos. If it's an AI video, we're not gonna watch it all the way through. We're still gonna pre-fire a little light. Most MHA quirks are stronger than you think. Vigilantes proves that. I don't think this will be an AI video. And even if it's not, you see how people don't be subscribing? 13K views, 600 something likes, only 720 subscribers. Talk to me though.
My Hero Academia's power system is one of the most famous in all of anime. It
Real
gives us
person.
tons of unique and flashy abilities, but sometimes it just feels vague and even a little uninspired. Compare that to Hunter x Hunter's Nen or Jujutsu Kaisen's Cursed Energy. Those systems are both hyper-specific, with clearly defined rules that apply to everyone. That structure pushes characters to use their powers creatively within a shared logic. But quirks are different. There's no universal
Make sure I check out the Discord.com link in the description below this video. You know what I'm saying? Click on that link down there, and you'll be notified every time I post a YouTube video, which is twice daily, and every time we go live on Twitch.
rules. And if you're lucky enough to be part of the 80% born with a quirk, congrats, you've got powers. And if you're really lucky, your power might actually be useful. Most of the main cast in MHA has what you would call a good quirk. Take for example someone like Endeavor. While I'm not discounting his training,
Stars and Stripes, New Order.
Endeavor was born with an extremely powerful ability, one that fits naturally into the hero mold. And that's why the hero system in MHA often feels a little bit unfair. But that entire idea gets flipped on its head in MHA Vigilantes, which by the way, is finally getting its long-awaited anime adaptation. But before I dive deeper, just a heads up, this video is going to contain manga spoilers, so if you're anime only, just come back when you're ready. But if you've already read it or just don't care enough to click away, then let's get right into it. To understand what really makes Vigilantes shine, we need to understand the inherent flaw within the hero system. Like my example with Endeavor, Hero Society rewards quirks that are already strong. While many could be a hero if given the proper training and support, to even have the chance, your quirk already needs to be good on its own. Especially with the implication of quirk laws in MHA, many people aren't even allowed to train their quirk up to something stronger. Rather than
Because you can't use your quirk until you get your hero license. And you can only do that by going to a hero school like UA. And the entrance ceremony may have like a written portion. I don't really remember one. It was not memorable enough for me to remember it. But you really gotta like put BTA. You have to have a strong quirk, a quirk that's able to subdue foes.
than most people trying to push the limits of their quirks, the true heroes and villains are the only ones who try. And everyday people rarely do anything with the quirk they were born with. This is a major issue because all of those quirks that people do nothing with could totally be utilized for good. It's just
See, an explanation for this is kind of like the hero laws allow society to seem normal, even though 80% of the population has a power. You feel me? That should be more integrated into society.
harder for people to see those quirks being useful when they're not trained. Take for example the test you have to take to even get into UA. Deku was able to pass with one for all, and quite frankly a few destroyed limbs, but regardless, he made it through. Without a quirk though, Deku would have stood no chance. The thing is, Deku always had the willpower and resolve to help people, which may be his greatest strength besides All for One. Deku could
Also there's no room for heroes. I don't want like a B team to exist because then that creates like discrimination. Like people who weren't in, like 1B had a crazy rivalry with 1A because they thought like, oh yeah, everybody looking, they're so snobbish, blah 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 blah. But I'm sure there are still crimes there, like people robbing stores. You don't need A tier heroes to do that. And because there are so few heroes, there are situations where someone gets in trouble and no one comes to save them. Now they become a villain because they're gonna blame like their system for like, oh, you didn't look for me, you didn't blah 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 blah. If there were more heroes, being that 80% of the population is heroes, you wouldn't need that particular person to come look for you. Someone would have saved you, and I would have kept you on the right path.
have totally even been a strong hero without a quirk, but that idea was never really showcased. This is why Knuckle Duster is such a unique concept and a slap in the face to Deku's idea of needing a quirk to be a hero, but I'll get to that later. For now, it's time to dive deeper into the world of Vigilantes, and prove how quirks aren't always as they seem. If you don't even know what MHA Vigilantes is, it's a spin-off series that takes place about 5 years before the main story. In my opinion, MHA has always seemed to have a problem of making everything way too grand. I do really like it, but there are just way too many people to keep track of all the time, and all the villains always have to be a world-ending catastrophe. Don't get me wrong, stories like that have their place, but Vigilantes is a nice breath of fresh air compared to that style of story. It takes a much more street brawler approach, something that you don't see nearly as often anymore. But how exactly does that relate to quirks? Well, in Vigilantes, the main cast is 3 people, with 2 of them being vigilantes that use their quirks to save people illegally. The difference between these 2 vigilantes and normal heroes though is what kind of powers they have, as well as how they use them. Koichi, the main character, says that his quirk is Sliding Glide, an ability that lets him propel himself off the ground and slide around. The issue is it's pretty slow. The other vigilante is Knuckle.
Yeah, that's hard. If he trains that illegally, you know how much faster you can get with that? And then not only that, it probably doesn't just apply to the ground. It probably applies to multiple surfaces. Let alone how are you sliding? It it's different if it's like grease where it like removes the friction. But if it's literally propelling you, that means you low key probably could fly with that bit.
Duster, who is actually
It's
completely
like an
quirkless.
energy
While these two
like
don't sound that
manipulation type
powerful,
of quirk.
through their efforts, we get to see how much quirks can evolve and morph over time to become something much better through technique and willpower, as well as how
And mind you, quirk evolution is such a forefront of the verse, but like the doomsday theory going on that quirks have become so powerful that people can't handle them. It is important to like train.
you don't need a quirk to become a real hero. You know how I just said that Koichi claimed that his quirk was incredibly weak and slow? Well, that's not exactly true. While
Yeah.
originally his quirk might have been weak, over the course of the manga, Koichi developed his quirk into a power that rivals many pro heroes. The real unique thing though is just how he did it. Because most people in MHA already have powerful quirks, we mostly see them honing their skills to gain more control over their quirk and increase their firepower. What we
Yeah.
don't see as much though is the complete rewiring of what a quirk is even capable of. Koichi said that his quirk was sliding glide, but it was more like a manipulation of attraction and repelling forces. In the
Yeah.
beginning, all Koichi could do was hover a few inches off the ground and mostly move straight forward. But when he applied real training and technique to his quirk, he actually learned that he could do so much more. Without getting too into the weeds of it, essentially, Koichi was able to manipulate his force on his hands and feet not only to repel, but also to attract. This let him do things like wall sliding, jumping in midair, firing off
sounds
energy
so
beams,
hard.
and becoming one of the most hyper-mobile heroes that we've ever seen. He ends up doing even more crazy stuff than that. But right now, I want to touch on the quirk power system a little more to understand just how he was able to take his quirk to that level in the first place. A criminally underutilized aspect of quirks is their scalability, but not all quirks are created equal. In my mind, there's three types of quirks: elastic, semi-rigid, and rigid. The first kind, elastic, is the kind of quirk that Koichi has. These quirks are powers that involve manipulation of a certain element or thing. There's rules to these quirks, but the application of them can vary widely
like
depending
little-
on the user.
like bungee
Koichi, for
jump.
example, has the power to attract and repel forces by using his hands and feet, and later even any part of his body. By doing this, he can propel with minor force to zip around quickly, or with precise high repellent, he can shoot out sniper-like shots. Towards the end of the manga, we also see him use so much force that it literally creates a rocket-like effect that sends him flying into the sky. It should also be noted that quirks are very emotionally based, so intense willpower and drive can vastly increase the ability of quirks along with technique, which Koichi displays many
Okay.
times. The next category are the semi-rigid quirks. These are quirks that have more specific
like
rule sets
one
that must be
thing.
followed, but many characters can still try and push the limits of those rules.
Yeah.
Think of Kirishima and Sero from Class 1A. They're both locked into only being able to do specific things with their quirks,
But
like
you can
hardening or
still
shooting tape,
expand that.
but through intense training and emotional strength, they can increase the power of those quirks. Kirishima could get even harder and more durable, and
Yeah, it's like the rigid quirks are like they do this thing and then you can either turn it up or turn that down. And then maybe move it in like a particular direction. But you can only like do this, like a diagonal line rather than like going full horizontal or like having it curve. So because it was like this to begin with, you can only really get that or that. While like there's the elastic, like Koishi's, where it is like a principle or a concept, which means you can do this with it. You can go anywhere, right? But you can also, in basic terms, go up or down, right? And then there's like the other quirks like fire, ice, where it's like, yeah, they do one thing, but you can manipulate the fire to create ropes. You can create non-hot fire, things of that nature. Not that I've really seen
Sarah's
that
tape
heavy
could
in
shoot
my
farther
hero.
and faster and even be stickier. Another semi-rigid quirk I really wanted to talk about was Deku's mom, object attraction. She can telekinetically attract small objects slowly towards her, or at least that's all she thinks that she can do. So
Oh,
many
bro,
characters
that
in
could've
MHA
went
have
so
quirks like this with
crazy.
untapped potential, but they never feel like they need to develop them, or even can for that matter. I believe with intense training and willpower, she could levitate heavier things with more speed, and eventually be able to use that in a combat scenario that can entrap
Yeah.
enemies or slip them up, although that's never something she would want to do. And finally, our last category is the rigid quirks. They only really serve one purpose and they can't do anything else. A good
Oh.
example of this would be Makoto's quirk Polygraph. By touching and asking a person a question, when they
have to
respond, she can
double-proof.
tell if they're lying or not. There's really nothing that she can do to improve this quirk, so its powers are pretty much set in stone for what it's capable of.
Maybe improve the range of it. Like she doesn't have to touch them. Like maybe the quirk has the ability to distinguish the truth from lies. I'm just thinking like from I like say I'm the creator, and then that would allow her to get like a certain like sixth sense or intuition for situations in general.
So how does any of this affect Koichi's growth over the series? Well, despite what one might have thought, his quirk was already full of potential. If anyone else was to have this quirk though, it likely wouldn't have been utilized in the same way, as on the surface it does look pretty weak. This is where Knuckle Duster's genius mentorship comes into play though. If you didn't already know,
Batman.
Knuckle Duster is a
Bruce.
former pro hero that went by the name of a clock. His quirk Overclock let him move at incredibly high speeds, but that's not all. The main strength of Overclock
kinda
was how it sped up
sucked.
brain processing to the degree where he could analyze the best possible move at any point in time incredibly quickly. Unfortunately though, All For One stole O'Clock's powers off screen, leaving him
Dang.
quirkless. While it sounds like the story might end there, O'Clock did not stop fighting. In fact, losing his quirk might have made him a better hero than he could ever have been before. By having to fight without a quirk and becoming the Vigilante Knuckle Duster, he learned every possible technique and method that he could use to become a hero without a quirk. He learned how to master hand-to-hand combat, utilizing gadgets,
Right.
understanding the city's layout, but more than anything, he never lost his will to fight. These are all the lessons that he taught Koichi, that no matter what your circumstances, you can still be a hero.
Yeah.
While Koichi was different in that he did have a quirk, his lessons from Knuckle Duster showed him that he could do so much more than he thought was possible with what he had. Also, side note, let me know if you guys want to see a full video on Knuckle Duster, because he's kind of the most interesting character in the whole series. But let's move on.
Facts.
So while it might make sense that Koichi was able to gain so many abilities from experimentation and training, that doesn't explain how his general firepower increased as well. Being able to use your quirk in different ways doesn't really require more power, it's just being able to use more of what your quirk does. At the start of the series, we see Koichi using Sliding Glide, but it's no faster than a slow bike, and you could probably catch up to him with a light run. However, towards the end of the series, we see him being able to outrun number 6 while using Overclock, making him one of the fastest speedsters in all of
Number 6? I
MHA.
don't know
These
ball.
improvements come from two things: strong emotions and real-world experience. The first one is pretty obvious, as we see it many times in the main series as well. When a
Yeah.
character is forced to save the day, their resolve becomes unshakable, and to
They
do what
can
needs
go
to be
even
done,
further.
their quirk can be pushed past their suspected limits. We see this in Koichi when he has to save Makoto from falling. He literally unlocks flight for a brief period of time, which is something that he had not yet done before. And later when he has to save Pop, he completely blows past every perceived limit that he once had. At first he could only do 2 air jumps in a row,
Put some
but when his
mental
friend's life
there.
was on the line, he was able to air hop multiple times across the entire city district, completely losing count of how many hops he even performed. That all makes sense and we've seen it many times before, but in the final battle with Koichi and number 6, we get to see that real life experience kick in to
Seems
make
like
Koichi
tough.
extremely formidable. When I say real life experience, you might be thinking back to the main series when heroes are dispatched to the scene, fight and capture a villain, make sure the civilians are safe, and then return safe
I'm
and sound.
talking like
Well, in Vigilantes,
combos,
it's not like that at all.
street
They're illegal heroes
layout.
after all, so they don't have to tell anyone where they're going or even who they're gonna fight. They just kind of figure it
Facts.
out. This street style hero
Jumping.
work that Koichi and Knuckle Duster did was what made them both such unique heroes with different strengths. Knuckle Duster wouldn't wait for a villain to make the first move, which might be
Yeah.
crude in some scenarios, but it's a strength that many other heroes lack. Koichi on the other hand was on the back foot for almost every fight he was in. For most of the series, he was never even good at fighting. Rather, he was much more suited for rescuing and moving quickly. This conditioned him to
Right.
act out of reflex when it came to running in defense, which showed up in his final fight. Even with number 6's insane speed, anytime he tried to
would
attack Koichi,
overreact.
he would instantly throw up a force on his body and deflect the hit, which was another hidden part of his quirk that he had unlocked through Vigilantism. Thing is, if Koichi was a real hero and not some vigilante, it's possible he
wouldn't
may
have
have
that
never even
experience.
developed this attribute, as his
Yeah.
fighting would have probably gone much differently, and wouldn't have conditioned him in the same way. What Koichi shows us isn't that just quirks can evolve, it's that most people never even come close to tapping into what their quirk is really capable of. The truth is, quirks in MHA are reflections of the user. They're physical expressions of will, instinct, personality, and drive. And just like a person can grow, adapt, and overcome, so can their quirk. Koichi didn't become
Facts.
powerful because Sliding Guide was some secretly broken ability. He became powerful because he stopped refusing to treat his quirk like it had limits. He trained like a hero, fought like a survivor, and discovered new layers of his power that no one, including himself, thought were even possible.
Like a way to
That's
think
the real
about it.
tragedy of the hero system. It doesn't teach people how to understand their quirks, it just teaches people how to use them. And when you've got a system that only rewards flashy pre-built strength, you end up ignoring characters who could become the strongest with enough vision and time. Koichi wasn't born a powerhouse, he became one. And if a so-called weakling like him can reach those heights, just imagine what the other so-called
Yeah,
useless quirks
anyone
might be
can.
hiding. Alright, that's
Yeah.
about it guys. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video.
Thank you, bro. That's a tough vid. I'm not gonna lie. Shout out to Shonen Scope. You know, not a hypocrite over here. Turn that bell on too. Shout out Shonen Scope. Hope to see more videos like this from him. As always, you know what time my videos come, and you know what time to see me next. Peace.